This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL, but hey, we've encouraged you all along to like and share these shows on your favorite social network and with all your friends and neighbors, because it's time now for the Tucker Carlson Crying Towel Show. Actually, it's the African American scene, brought to you by independent insurance agent Rudy Howard and hosted by the one and only Rudy Howard. Good evening, Rudy.
Oh, good evening, good evening, good evening. I love that intro. Well, I gotta tell you, I am blessed to be able to say I have all my teeth. But I had a visit with the dentist today. And boy, I'll tell you what, I love my new dentist, but boy, if there's anything I hate is going to the dentist. That is such an agonizing, painful process. I was in that chair for 3 hours. And at the end, I was like, please. She said, well, don't you want to pick the color? I said, I don't want to pick, just pick the color. Just pick it. I don't care. Just pick it. Whatever you pick will be fine with me. She said, are you sure? I said, I'm positive. At that point, I just wanted to get out of there. But I know for some of you listening, that'll give you a good laugh because you've been right there where I've been as far as that's concerned. Well, I hope Carlos is listening tonight because I'm going to definitely straighten him out, because he tried to correct me last week on something, and I'm going to show him that what I said last week was accurate. And if you want to call in, that phone number is 340-1590. What a week. What a week. Tucker Carlson is gone. DeSantis gets sued by Disney. And Don Lemon gets dismissed from CNN after 17 years. Now, I will have to tell you, I have no love for Tucker Carlson. I think he's been divisive. I think he has spewed hatred. And I think he is overall a bad tonic for our country with a big viewership. But I hope and I pray some of you that are listening tonight, because I got into it with somebody that I had to block. I no longer wish to have any further dialogue with him because he's lost all sense of reality and objectivity when it comes to anything involving conservatism. He is stuck on, I must defend conservatism no matter how corrupt, no matter how far-reaching they go. And he calls me his Christian brother. And I said, how can you call me your Christian brother and you come at me with that? You don't understand. I said, well, I don't know. I don't think that I'm the Bible scholar that you are, but I think I know enough about the Bible to be able to have some discernment about what it is that God wants for us, his people, to do and how he wants us to behave. And I'm not sure why you can't seem to get a grasp on that yourself. Now, I'm going to say to you, I'm not sure exactly why Don Lemon was fired. If I knew, I would tell you. I can say he made some unfortunate statements, and he apologized for those statements. That is without question. He did apologize. Now, as far as Tucker Carlson is concerned, oh my God. And I just am absolutely astounded by how many people are sticking by his side, even though he has now been proven to be a liar. That's not something I say lightly. He has been proven to be a liar. Now, if you're a Christian, and I certainly claim to be one, how do you do that? How do you stand by somebody who's now proven to be a liar? And in addition to what we have here with Tucker Carlson, our American society's got some pretty big cracks in it right now. We had the issue with Judge Thomas. Now we got the issue with Neil Gorsuch. And we have the Chief Justice refusing to testify before the Judicial Committee in the Congress. Now, I'm going to say this to you, and this is something I've said before. If there was a Democrat, now I hope you would believe me when I say this, guilty of the behavior of Clarence Thomas or Neil Gorsuch, I would think the only appropriate thing to do would be for them to resign. I am willing to withhold some judgment on Neil Gorsuch until more information is known. But as far as Clarence Thomas is concerned, there's only one way out of this, in my opinion. There's only one noble and proper manner in which to handle this situation: for him to resign from the Supreme Court. He needs to resign. And I am going to hope upon hope that maybe, just maybe, Judge Roberts is in the background trying to talk to Thomas and convincing him that that is the proper thing to do. I don't think so, but you know I'm that Pollyanna kid from the 60s, so I hope that that is exactly what he's doing. But let's get back to Tucker for a second. I need for you guys, my conservative listeners, and that phone number is 340-1590, 340-1590, to really get a grip on what it is we are doing to our country by supporting an obvious liar. Why? Why would you do that? And it is only something that further divides us as a country. And I'm going to talk about that more in this show. And again, that number is 340-1590. So we know one of the reasons that he was let go was lying to the public. And they had his former producer on last night, and she talked about what a toxic environment it was to work for him. he made sexist and misogynistic comments on a regular basis. And they tried to get her to protect him, and her conscience would not allow her to do it. Thank God for that. So she refused to take that position, which they hoped that she would take in order to avoid the potential damages that it was going to cost Fox. He was also guilty of portraying false information. Now, all of us saw the January 6th insurrection. He tried to portray it as people on a sightseeing tour through the Capitol. Now, it don't get any more dishonest than that, because we were all watching it on TV, people crawling up the walls and knocking down the barriers, etc. And one of the things that Amy Grossberg said last night, which I had a fallout with one of my conservative associates about, was this Evans story that Tucker kept pushing all the time. He pushed it and pushed it and pushed it. Grossberg basically said last night it was not true, and that he did that in an effort to protect Fox from any liability in being linked to the uprising on January 6th. But there's people out there that still believe it. And, you know, one of the things that Tucker says is that, you know, you see him whisper in somebody's ear, and that person then directly goes and knocks down the barrier. And that was the initial spark of the insurrection. Well, if you saw the 60 Minutes show Sunday night, yes, he said some stupid things. Yes, those things were not excusable. But when they showed the video, they also showed him specifically trying to make calm with some of the people on the lines there that were about to breach the Capitol. That's the part that we hadn't seen before, okay? So now I understand why, and Tucker liked to say, why did they take his name off of the most wanted list? Well, now we know why, because after they saw the video, they could see that he was not as an instigator as described by Tucker Carlson. Initially he was, but he was also somebody that was trying with a very veiled effort to keep the peace. The other thing that he did, he allowed guests to promote unproven theories about the 2020 election. A very good friend of mine, whose name I won't call, sent me a video of Sidney Powell, the first time that she was out there talking. And he said to me, what do you think about that? I said, are you serious? Do you believe that? And he said, I'm just a businessman trying to make a living. I said, I get that, but don't you think some of that sounds kind of shaky? I mean, some of it just didn't even make any sense. And listen, one of the other things that's happened this past week the My Pillow guy put up $5 million, and he said if anybody can prove his purported theory about the manipulation of the election, he would pay them $5 million. Well, an arbitrator ruled that this guy, who was also a Trump supporter, proved that My Pillow guy, Mike Lindell's theory about the election was false. And the arbitrator said he needs to pay him the $5 million. Well, of course, you know, he has yet to pay it. So we'll see what happens about that. And listen, I want you to know, they paid $877 million this past week. And Mike Lindell is still on the hook. Sidney Powell's still on the hook. And Grossberg, who was a producer, has bought suit against Fox, and they're still on the hook to her. Stay tuned, there's more to come. And as I said, and I've been saying for weeks, this was going to be a case of record proportions. And thus far it is, and we haven't even finished all of the litigation that is yet to come out of it, not to mention the fact that Smartmatic is suing Fox for more than what Dominion did. And listen, I have to share this with you, and because it's just so insane, but I'm just going to show you how far people have gone on the hook. And before I cut this person off, they said to me, well, don't you think they should be required to prove the damages that they sued Fox for? And I thought to myself, well, what an insane comment that was. Fox was represented by lawyers. Does he really think that he was the only person smart enough to wonder whether or not those damages has been established? Does he think that nobody on Fox's side was trying to determine what the damages were? And we got Jay on line one. How are you, Jay?
Oh, I'm doing great, Rudy. I'm doing great. I'm glad you're hitting all the spots, all the things that's happening, because people need to wake up, and they need to hear this every day until Election Day. And I think that'll do it, because there's so much turmoil. And these Republicans, I mean, they acting like, and they root for Putin and all these other crazy people, all of these fascist countries. And it seems like this country, if they didn't hold on and take charge of not Congress, but of the Capitol, when they had that insurrection, that was what they want. They were trying to take over and just make this into a dictatorship. But it was good that we were able to hold on, and the National Guard was able to get in there at the last minute. But what I wanted to say, I saw Brian Mast, our congressman, on TV this morning on CNN.
Oh.
And they didn't ask him the question I wanted them to ask, but they asked him about the debt ceiling. And he said that they're working on it, and he said that they're going to come up with a bill and present it to the president. And what they want to do, and I read about it. They want to cut $30 billion out of the Defense Department, including veterans, which he's a veteran. He lost both his limbs in the service. So he's going along with them, even though he's hurting himself and all his fellow guys that were fighting and dying for him when he was over there in Iraq or wherever he was. I guess he forgot about that since he's so loyal to Trump. These people are ridiculous. They got their loyalty in the wrong place. I thought he raised his hand and saluted the American flag when he got in there and made that pledge. And now he comes out here and he changed all of a sudden. He don't remember how he lost his limbs, and he's getting paid by veteran benefits, but all of a sudden he's going along with these clowns that want to cut veterans benefits. They want to cut the IRS. They don't want them to add more agents so they can check out these billionaires who are not paying their taxes. Some billionaires are paying less than people who work in restaurants. So that's what's happening in America, and people got to wake up and understand what's going on. And I just hate seeing what's going, what they're doing, and nobody, few people are starting to step up. Clarence Thomas, I know his family because I have relatives in Savannah, Georgia, and in this area where this billionaire bought his house for him and let his mother in there, and it didn't report it to the. He didn't report it. He's supposed to report that, to the judge. He's a Supreme Court judge. They have, even though they have their little light and they don't have to follow all the strict rules like other judges, but still he's supposed to report any kind of financial exchange, traveling around with a billionaire on his yacht and all that. And the guy's paying for his hotel and everything, him and his wife. All of that stuff he didn't report. And Roberts don't want to go on the Judiciary Committee in the Senate to let him know what happened or what he's going to do about it and stand up and be a man. No, he refuses. So they're subpoenaing him. That's what they're going to finally do. They're going to create a havoc, and they're going to subpoena him and have him come in there and find out what he's going to do about it. If he's not going to do something, then the Justice Department can do something about it and bring him in or impeach Justin Thomas or whatever they're going to do. But, they just think that they can get away with murder, and it goes on and on, from Congress, from these senators to the insurrection. Congress people that were part of the insurrection are on committees, talking about they want to take over America, and they're friends with Putin, and they're still walking around and we're paying their salary. That's enough for me, man.
Yeah. Thank you, Jay. I got another call. Appreciate you, my friend. Hey, Steve, how are you?
Good. How are you, Rudy?
Good.
I agreed with the other caller. The only thing I disagreed with you was that Marine that they're harassing. Picture this: I was in law enforcement, and if you robbed a bank and begged the guy not to do it, but you were in the car and he shot somebody, you're getting charged with murder too.
Yeah.
If you didn't want to be part of it, don't be there, period.
Steve, I need you to pick up the phone and not use the speakerphone because it's giving us a big howl in our ears over here.
I'm not using the speaker.
Okay.
I'm not using it.
Okay, well, you got to probably upgrade your phone or something, though. But we got,
Yeah,
I'll write. That's what happened. You hear that? That's what's going on. I'm just trying to keep you on the air. That's all.
Right. Well, I tried to turn the radio off.
Okay. Well, Steve.
Are you still there, Steve? Because we got a show going on right here.
Yes. Okay. The first guy, he was there. I'm sorry, but he's guilty. And, he picked his choice. Now, what the other gentleman said, I agree with. I've been here 50 years. We are corrupt from the top to the bottom, but we're also lazy. 10% of the people voted in the last election in Port St. Lucie to tax themselves. And that's 100% of the people get the tax. So if they're going to stop being stupid and lazy, then we'll get our country back. But if they keep it up, we can kiss it goodbye.
That's for sure. We do. We have to listen. I think this Tucker Carlson thing was a wake-up call. And anybody with an ounce of decency that cares about America will find that what he did was reprehensible and is without excuse. And I hope to God some of my conservative listeners will finally say to themselves, that was a bridge too far.
You're right. I mean, we are America. We are not elephants and donkeys. We are not supposed to hate each other. And that's all Carlson did, was he preached fear and hate because he had no platform. He was trying to defend an administration that was probably the most corrupt in history, even surpassing Nixon.
I would say that's true.
I believe it's true too. And I'm in my 70s like you, Rudy, and this is not the America I grew up in.
Not at all.
And I want the other one back. You can keep the electronics, but I want the morality, the loyalty, and the consciousness of the country back.
Oh man, amen. Amen, amen. Thank you, Steve. Always a pleasure.
You too. Bye-bye.
One of the other things that caused Tucker some issues was text messages that showed he was disrespectful to his superiors. I think he had become full of himself, and because of his ratings, thought he was an untouchable. Surprise, surprise. I guess you found out that that didn't work out so well. The other thing that I think was part of his undoing was advocating for autocrats. He did that openly on his show, including a trip to Hungary where he hosted a show with Orban. I don't know about that. And constantly questioning why we're not supporting Russia. I don't get that, but I will tell you this, because I saw it on TV tonight. There was a loud cheer from the Department of Defense today, because they did not like Tucker. And here's one final thought before I move on from this Tucker thing. Russia has offered Tucker a job. Forget the fact that I'm a Democrat. Forget the fact that you're a Republican. Does that bother you at all that Russia offered Tucker Carlson a job? Does that bother you? That damn sure bothers me. It should bother you. But I want you to just think about it. Now, let me get back to last week. I was having some technical difficulties, and I was talking about gun violence in America by state. One of the things when you hear gun violence, the next words out of any conservative's mouth is Chicago. And then after that, it's New York. Now, let me give you some interesting information. Here are the top 10 states regarding gun violence per capita. And per capita is the only way fair to do this, because New York City is bigger than some states. Guess who's number one? Alaska, Carlos, Alaska. Number two, Mississippi. Number three, Wyoming. Number four, New Mexico. Number five, Alabama, with 22.2 per 100,000 people. Louisiana, Missouri, South Carolina, Arkansas, and Montana. Those are the top 10 gun violence by state. But when you hear Fox or anybody else make any talk about gun violence, the first words out of their mouth is Chicago. Now, while we're on that subject, let me give you another little tidbit of information that you might find interesting. I looked up the top police forces in the United States. Guess who's number one? New York City. Number two, Los Angeles. Number three, Chicago. Number four, Houston. And number five, Phoenix. How about that? Those are the top police forces. And here's, it is not hard for you to make the correlation either. Just think about the mass violence, gun deaths you've seen in the past since the start of the year. And none of them took place in any of those major jurisdictions. New York City has one of the most sophisticated, high-tech police departments, not only in this country, but in the world. Very high-tech. In New York City and surrounding area, when you violate a traffic law, you get a ticket in the mail. They have those cameras. They tried to do that here, and all of a sudden those cameras were taken down. But that's what's happening. So don't let people keep telling you every time they talk about gun violence, they say Chicago, Chicago. Listen, I worked in downtown Manhattan on Maiden Lane, and then I worked on John Street for almost 9 years. I never was fearful about getting on the subway, and I rode the subway every day and then caught the Long Island Railroad. I never was fearful about that. And at night, if I was coming back from a meeting or something, then I generally would take a cab to the train station. But otherwise, I'd ride the subway and had no fear about it at all, to tell you the truth. So you've been sold a bill of goods about your safety. And those people that live in New York swear by New York, and you couldn't drag some of them out of New York. But the point that I'm trying to make is, please add a healthy dose of skepticism to this stuff that you're being fed. You are being fed stuff that's not true, or a mischaracterization of the real information. So if somebody was to say there was more deaths in Chicago than there were in Alaska, the answer to that is yes. But Chicago has 10 times the population of Alaska. So how could there not be more deaths in Chicago than there would be in Alaska? So, but when you put it in perspective and you put it on a per capita basis, which is the only fair way to do it, all of a sudden that statistic is now distorted. So I just want you to think about it. One of the articles that I read in preparation for tonight was Gun Violence by Colin Woodward. Now, what he does, and I have to say it's very unique. I don't know of anybody else that's tried to take this approach. He looks at it from a historical perspective. And he is of the opinion these gun rights and positions on guns is a byproduct of culture that has been developed over our history. And when you look at it like that, I think it makes some sense. Like, one of the things that he first points out, that one of the regions that he looks at in terms of evaluating gun violence includes the Big Apple, New York City. And it is, on a per capita basis, one of the safest parts of America. How about that? And then he takes another look at Florida and Texas. And gun death rates per capita are 3 to 4 times higher than New York. Bet you didn't know that, did you? 3 to 4 times higher than New York. But DeSantis just told you that crime in New York City is out of control. Isn't that what he just told you? And you accepted that, lock, stock, and barrel. Not all of you, because some of the people listening here are friends of mine, and they know better, and they never accepted that. And I have some friends that might be listening that live in New York, and they certainly know better. Now, the big point that Colin makes is that culture drives politics, law, and policy. I hadn't looked at it that way, but I certainly can't argue with that assumption that Colin comes up with, that culture drives politics, law, and policy. So now, how does he go about this? He goes about this by creating an identity for sections of the country. Identity number one, Yankeedom. That includes a region of about 55.8 million people. Region number two, he calls it New Netherlands. That has about 18.8 million people. Region number three, Tidewater. That includes about 12.6 million people. Number four, Greater Appalachia. That includes about 59 million people. Number five, the Midlands. That includes 37.7 million people. Number six, the Deep South. That includes 43.5 million people. Number seven, El Norte. That includes about 33.3 million people. And then you have the left coast at 17.9 million, and far west at 28.7 million. So, and so he takes these areas and he attributes there's certain cultural behavior that allows them to come up with their attitude toward guns and gun violence. Here's one of the ways he identifies it. The Deep South which was born in a tradition of agriculture and a certain level of machismo, your personal integrity and your beliefs are very important to you, and anybody that steps on those could feel your wrath. That is part of that Deep South tradition, as opposed to the North, where there is a different level of cultural conditioning. And let me say this to you, for those of you who have never been there. New York is another complete animal all unto itself. You have every culture, every ethnic group that you can think of lives in New York. And the only section of New York City that is predominantly white, and it's not 100% white, is Staten Island. The rest of New York City is a smorgasbord of people and cultures. So what does that tell us? What is he trying to say to us? Which is something I've said here so many times. What's different in New York City is people know more about people who are different than themselves. Can you get that? People in New York City know more about people that are different than themselves, which means there's a tendency to be more tolerant. Now, it would be stupid of me to say that New York City is free of all violence, because that's just not true. But what I am trying to tell you is that as Colin develops this thought process about culture and it leading to policy and laws, that development of culture is created by those that live in that culture and who understand the people that live in that culture. So now if you fast forward down to the Deep South, you can understand that there is not the same level of cultural assimilation in the Deep South as there is in New York City. And I would just tell you, just Florida for itself. Florida is a very, very strange animal, because you're on the East Coast of Florida, as I am now. And if you drive from the East Coast to the West Coast, there are parts of Florida that you travel through to get over to Tampa. You would think you had just fallen into a time warp, because they are so different than what you're accustomed to on the East Coast. And that's Florida's character. It is a different state if you're on the East Coast or the West Coast. And in Orlando, that's different also. But those parts in between, some of which is beautiful horse country, that is another kind of living altogether. And you'd find some people there that would not think very highly of me going through that part of Florida. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, Colin struck a chord with me in trying to identify regions as areas where culture has created the environment for gun culture. I think he's onto something there. Now, one of the other things that I think is very interesting is in Greater Appalachia, they have the highest rate of gun suicides in the country. Appalachia, they have a very high rate of gun suicides. I wish that I could remember the book that I read about that, and I can. It's off the top of my head. I read a book when I'm trying very hard to understand some of the conservative culture, and it talked to me about Arkansas and Tennessee and Missouri, and how people in those areas refused health care, even though some of them were dying from health-related conditions because they did not want to be associated with the ACA. Okay. I read that, and the author was saying, I'm not sure that I understand why they want to die to try to prove a point, but that is, and I guess that takes us back to what Colin Woodward was telling us about culture. And in that culture, those people feel as though the health insurance that they might get is something that they otherwise were not entitled to. But they have been brainwashed to believe that, because there's other countries that provide health insurance for their people, and it's not seen as negative. Do they have to pay a little more taxes? Yeah, okay. But in exchange, people get health insurance. But hey, it is what it is. And, if that's your position, and I'm not going to start whining about that again, because I've whined about that incessantly on here, that I will never understand, as long as I live, why people are opposed to people having health insurance. And people have so many misunderstandings about what the ACA is and how it can help you. But I will just give you this one example, because it was a referral from a friend of mine. I had a lady that was on a COBRA plan that was about to expire. She was paying north of $400 a month. And because the policy was expiring, that gave me an open door to allow her to get into an ACA plan. I put her in a Cigna plan for $47 a month with no deductible. How about that? $47 a month with no deductible. Now, there's people out there going to say, nah, I don't believe. Well, okay, you don't have to believe me. I just happened to sell the stuff, and I happened to explore and investigate, and that was the plan I was able to come up with her. $47 a month. Now, why was it $47 a month? Because she was eligible for subsidy. And one of the things that has happened under President Biden is he expanded the amount of subsidy people are entitled to based on income. One of the initial sticking points with people about the ACA was they felt it was too limited about who was eligible for subsidies and who wasn't. And Biden expanded that. See, y'all don't even know about that. And you probably don't even know anybody that you've talked to that could tell you that. So you may be sitting there right now going, well, I don't know why haven't I talked to somebody about that? Okay. So just keep that in mind. And we're coming up to another open enrollment on November 1st, where you'll be able to get back into the ACA. The Medicare season will start in October, and the open enrollment for ACA will start in November. So Of all the things that I've told you tonight, I really want you to really, 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 really think hard about your support of people that are lying to you. Why would you do that? Because they are conservative and you're conservative? Give me a break. That's not a reason. But anyway, I hope that I shed some light and provided you with information that you have been deprived of, especially when it comes to what are dangerous cities when it comes to gun violence. I've just demonstrated to you, and I will just give you those top 10 again real quick on a per capita basis, because I want to end the show with this in case Carlos just turned in late. Top 10 gun violence by state on a per capita basis. Alaska, number 1. Mississippi, number 2. Wyoming, number 3. New Mexico, number 4. Alabama, number 5. Louisiana, number 6. Missouri, number 7. South Carolina, number 8. Arkansas, number 9. And Montana, number 10. Those you have it, my friends, the top 10 gun violence by state on a per capita basis. So the next time somebody starts telling you about Chicago, tell them you listen to Rudy Howard and you know better. Because Rudy Howard gave me the 411 on what's what. Now, there's going to be some of you out there that are listening going, that damn liberal, he's out here spouting that crazy stuff again. Look it up, just like I do. Our gun violence by state and dated 2023. Look it up. You'll get the same information I just gave you. And you'll know that it wasn't spouting from a liberal. It was spouting from a man who believes in facts. And with that, I'm going to say to you guys, thank you so much, as always, for tuning in to the African American scene. And I will tell you, somebody did win the Easter House. And the person that won the Easter House lives here in Fort St. Lucie. It just wasn't one of you guys. But we'll be back with that again next year. But thank you so much for listening to the African American scene. God bless and be safe. And I will see you right here next week for the African American scene.
The African American scene with Rudy Howard, your independent insurance agent here on the Treasure Coast, who sponsors and brings you this show, The African American Scene. Tune in each and every Wednesday evening in the 6 p.m. hour and binge watches some of the archives on YouTube under WPSL TV. Rudy Howard's African American Scene on WPSL Port St. Lucie.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.